a warm welcome to all of you. So I think I have the honor of facilitating the first session, which is called Conservation in the Age of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And I see that we have a group of very highly educated, excellent, experienced panelists and moderators throughout the whole day. So I think who we are starting off right now is just a small sample representative of the whole day sessions. So please make sure that you catch all of the sessions for the rest of the day. Don't miss any of the sessions. I think these are all integral part of one session, is integral part of the other session. And by the end of the day, I'm sure that we will be able to take away a lot of valuable lessons. So with this, I guess my job is to get out of the way of this excellent panelists and then the excellent audience who are represented here. Let me, I suppose the order of the panelists and the speakers, by default, I suppose since we already have a presentation up there, I have no other option. So we'll have to go with whoever presentation is up there. Then I suppose we do have one lady on the panel. So contrary to the conventional way, I would request her to maybe perhaps go at last. Then. Is it okay, last? I just want to have your consensus. So let me first, I will not go into detailed introduction because I think all of you, especially being in a small society, we know each and every one. So Dr. Sige, the first panelist member, we have also been very good friends. I think in Bhutan, everybody knows everybody. But I think, as you have realized, he has been recently, I think, presenting a lot of good ideas at the Buffett conference day before, I think for the past 3 days. And even, I think, other than that, he has been leading the Thimphu Tech Park. And he has been one of the leaders of the Australian, I think, award community. So there are so many things that I could say about him. But I think the important thing to look for is the wonderful ideas that he's sharing with us. And in a way, linking all the technology, all the fourth industrial revolution, how he's going to relate that to the biodemocracy, which is the theme and the topic of the day, to which I think our Honorable Thokpin and Chief Guest has really articulated, both tying in the spiritual component as well as the legislation component. And I think we are really, really grateful to Major Thokpin for defining the tenure, the tone for the day session. So with this, may I invite Dr. Sige to please come up on the podium to deliver his presentation. Thank you.
Honorable Major Thokpin, members of the parliament, I think we have few of them, and fellow speakers, moderators, and ladies and gentlemen. So I have the honor of being the first speaker. We had a quiet discussion before this, and then Madam Namge said she would like to go last. Then I said, maybe I will start, because it's a privilege to be with two of the most well-known journalists of Bhutan on stage. And I think if they go fast, it will be difficult for me to, I think, be at their bar. So I decided to go fast, say Sunil. So at the outset, I would like to mention that I'm from a technology background. I'm not really an expert on democracy or environment or conservation. But then, when I was in high school itself, I was a nature club member and active participant in RSPN-led essay competitions, and have won few prizes as well. And I took part in nature club activities. So I am very pro-environment, says Sunil. So I read up a bit, and I found that a lot of things that are where technology and environment can come together. So I'll try to present that, Sejunil. To start with, I would like to mention that we are currently living in a very exciting time. At no point in the history of humankind on this planet been the change so fast It is changing so fast, every minute. And I think it's in the last 2 or 3 decades that the earth has seen the biggest change in terms of technology, in terms of the way we live, in every way. And along with that, I am a firm believer that technology is at the center of bringing changes to the way we live, and also the way, especially how the people's lives have been improved. So I think if we really look at history, probably for a common man, this is the time when his life is most comfortable. Maybe in the past, the powerful and the rich, they might have enjoyed comfortable lives, not the common man. But I think right now is the time when our earth is having probably the best life for the common man, for the average person. So it is anywhere in the world and in Bhutan as well. But along with this, because of the changes in technology, as I mentioned earlier, the pressure on the earth is also the greatest. So I would like to show you this graph. So if you look at the deforestation that has been happening, it has been increasing very drastically since 1950. Because as you know, along with technology, it really improves our ability to cut down forests. Initially, you might take days to cut down few trees. Then the machines came and easily. Now, earlier the machines needed operators. Now machines don't need even operators. You can just let a machine out into the jungle and the machine would cut down the forest on its own. So deforestation has been happening at a very alarming rate. So you can see the graph, how it has been increasing. And here, only the 3 major areas are represented: Amazon, Congo Basin, and Southeast Asia. So I think it is very alarming. And next, I want to quickly show you a timeline. This one is a very interesting picture that I saw, and it seems to be quite popular online. This is from a website called XKCD. It's a web comic, and this picture that they made, it seems to be quite popular. So I'll quickly show you the picture. So this shows a timeline of the Earth's temperature. It can be scrolled down. I'm sorry for taking time to set it up a bit, but our Earth is billions of, I think, years old. So here the timeline starts from 20,000 before Christ, when the Earth's temperature was somewhere below -4 degrees centigrade. And then going up is a timeline. Then not much change has happened. The temperature has remained almost steady. Then somewhere around 14,000 BC, there is some increase. But it's still, this line here, the line you see in the middle, that is 0 degrees. So this is the Earth temperature graph. So, the Earth and also the human history is very, very old. And somewhere in 1500 BC, it has come little above 0 degrees. Then going down further, 1500 BC, 1000 BC. And then, so this is somewhere around the 1st century BC, when Jesus was born. And from there onwards, still there isn't much change. The Gupta Empire, all this time, Tang Dynasty, and then it's coming up. And just look, if you look at it from the whole age of the Earth, within a very short period of time, the temperature has shot up. Here, they call it the hockey stick. So when you come here, it becomes a hockey stick. It goes this way. And this is the current trend. And the middle here, I think those at the back, you cannot see. This is the optimistic scenario, and this is the desired scenario. We wish it could be like this, but we seem to be going this way. So the Earth temperature is increasing drastically, so I would like to reflect on it from the whole time frame. Ani Beudalu, within the short period of time, no, with the technology, this is the thing that has been happening. So the rise in Earth temperature is not a myth, as some people say. So this is really something that is happening, and there is evidence to back it up. So next, having looked at the Earth temperature, I would like to now reflect on the some of the major cycles of extinction events that have occurred on the Earth. How many of you know how many cycles of extinction events that have happened on the Earth? So I also didn't really know before, frankly speaking. So I looked up, and actually 5 cycles of extinction events have happened. And the last extinction cycle happened 65 million years ago. At that time, around 50% of the different genera of species have disappeared, and 75% of the species disappeared from the face of Earth. And right now, we are in a cycle of the 6th mass extinction. So even as we stand here, hundreds and hundreds of species are becoming extinct. And this is a quote from the Chief Environmental Officer at Microsoft. He says, "We know that species are becoming extinct at a rapid pace, at least 1,000 times more quickly than would be expected in the absence of human activities." They say that the difference between this cycle of extinction activity and the previous cycle is that this time it is man-made, all because of man-made activities. So humanity has wiped out about 60% of animal populations since 1970, our report finds. And this picture here is from the Amazon. So a lot of forests are cleared for cattle farming. So this is the kind of the bleak scenario when we look at the, the condition of our Earth, of our environment. However, I think, as I mentioned earlier, this also coincides with the rapid advancement in technologies. So there is probably some hope that technology may come to the rescue. So technologies like artificial intelligence. So these are already being used a lot by conservationists. The picture here is from Hawaii. So I would like to quickly say what this picture represents. In Hawaii, I think there are 2 rare species of bird which are being killed because of the power lines. And many people think that these accidents are very rare. Then some conservationists, they recorded the sounds. They recorded the sounds of birds striking the power line. But for the conservationists to really listen to the sounds and to analyze this data is very difficult. So here, the artificial intelligence comes to the rescue. So all these sounds are fed into the artificial, software, artificial intelligence machine. And then this was able to give accurate data of how many bird strikes are happening. And they found that it is much more than people expected. So these are kind of how technologies will come in use for conservation. And there are also a lot of other tools that can be used for used by the conservationists. And there are companies that have come up. For instance, this Conservation Matrix is a company that gives artificial intelligence solution to conservationists. So there are other tools called Wildbooks, and there is one which is a network called Automated Remote Biodiversity Monitoring Network, Aribimonse, Anzumdu. And I think drones, I need not even explain. So drones would be, I think, tremendously helpful for conservationists. And recently I read a news where drones have been used to plant trees and also for monitoring species distribution. And next is a concept called IoT, Internet of Things. We are becoming increasingly connected. Just now, humans are already connected to the internet. All of us are connected to the internet through our mobile phones, mostly. So we all of us are. Next, now things are getting connected, and the animals and plants will be connected to the internet. Then the conservationists will have real-time data to monitor and see what's happening. The next technology that we have is blockchain. Some say blockchain is a solution in search of a problem. So there are a lot of problems that can be solved by blockchain. There are a lot of learning resources that our conservationists can use to learn about new technologies. Deep learning open source libraries that two of the biggest companies in the world, Google and Facebook, have put on, called Tensor and PyTorch. There are lots of resources that I can share. So in short, what I feel is that our conservationists can learn from these technologies and use these technologies as well, although we have been doing well. And last slide I want to show is, there's I think a book written called Future Files, ICT of the Next 50 Years. Here, they are trying to predict what are the things that will become extinct. He said that in 2009, mending things will become extinct, which may be true. Many of the cobblers in India lost their jobs because now the shoes have become so cheap. We get it cheaply from India. No, people no more need to really repair the shoes. Mostly. And then 2016, retirement will become, the library will become extinct. 2037, glaciers will become extinct. But going down, in 2050, ugliness will become extinct, which means every person will be, handsome and beautiful. Maybe through genetic engineering or plastic surgery, I don't know. But also it is said that nation states and also death, maybe people can live forever. So that is what is predicted for 2050. But then 2037, if we say that glaciers will become extinct, maybe the whole life will become extinct, then there is no use of getting rid of ugliness and all that. So this is something to ponder upon. And with that, I would like to end my talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor. If you can please take a seat at the podium. Thank you so much for sharing with us the possibilities, I think, with the fourth industrial revolution. I think there are so many ideas that Doctor have shared in his presentation, but I think as you'll realize by the end of the session, I'll be one of the panelists who will be most hated by the audience because we do need to keep the time session away. So every subsequent speaker will have about 10 minutes to talk. And after that, then I'll follow up with maybe a couple of questions. And then meanwhile, I would like to request the audience to also start thinking about what are some of the questions that you would like to put forth session Vela. And so I think some of the few things that we have seen from Doctor's presentation, I think in terms of challenges with the statistics and the graph that has shown us, I think the fact that we are facing a big problem in terms of the environmental degradation. As a matter of fact, some scholars put it even more strongly, saying that this is actually an age of environmental carnage and ecological holocaust. So these are some very strong, passionate, I think, reactions that the way that we are sort of heading towards in the future session Vela. So I think as a follow-up on Doctor's excellent presentation, I know the time, with the limited time, these are just enough for us to take some of the few ideas. And I just wanted to catch on to the idea of the blockchain, which I know that Doctor has been very, very passionate about. And he has been sharing this in a lot of forums, including the social media. So Doctor, I think with the part that blockchain can play, I think in terms of mainly linking to the bio-democracy, the topic for today. If you can elaborate maybe with one very specific example, for example, on the forest management in Bhutan, the 60% mandatory forest management that we have in Bhutan, how would you use blockchain to address that, Sishunuvi?
Thank you. Blockchain is a distributed ledger technology. So it's mainly in the form of blocks. And the reason why blockchain is considered very secure is that the data is replicated in different nodes. And then in order for the data to be changed, then at least 50% of the nodes has to approve that this can be changed. That's why it's decentralized and it's considered secure. And it can be, blockchain can be, again, going further, there is private blockchain or public blockchain, say, Anzumela. So now when it comes to the specific application, because blockchain is very secure, so I think one of the ideas to be used for conservation would be to put certain conservation information. Maybe it is in terms of the number of different species that we have, or number of trees, or number of different animals that we have in the forest. If we store it on the blockchain along with the details, I think the chances of losing that is very less, and also the chances of that being tampered with is very less secure. So I have heard from a friend of mine who is from the forestry background. He said that I think some plants unique to Bhutan, some tree, that has been now claimed to be, and it is taken somewhere, and now it's claimed to be from somewhere, and they are using it for a different purpose without due recognition to Bhutan, or without due, the compensation being, received by the actual source where it came from. So these kind of things can be solved. If it is put on blockchain, then this cannot be tampered with. So it is transparent and it is secure. So nobody can say that, nobody can claim falsely that it came from somewhere else. So blockchain the ability, the ani do se junila. Recently, I met a guy from India. For example, in India, they are trying to use blockchain for smart will. When a rich person dies, I heard that there are around 5 or 6 people having original looking wills, saying, he left the wealth to me. And another person will come and say that it was left to me. And all the wills look good, looks like original. But blockchain can also solve that same. So once it is put on the blockchain, it is secure, then nobody can tamper with and then make a duplicate. So the actual to whom the wealth is left, he gets it. So from that standpoint, I think we can think of applying blockchain for various things. India, I think not in India, some other countries, I think Estonia, they have used it for land registry. It can solve the problem of one single plot of land being sold to many people. So these are the examples of applications of blockchain. That's all.
Thank you, Doctor, for your, I think, elaboration on blockchain, Shunwei. I'm sure, I think, with the subsequent presenters, again, there will be issues which will pertain to ideas and areas where you can use this particular technology. And also, I'm sure from the audience, there will be a lot of questions and ideas on this. So I think with this, let's move on to the next speaker. I would like to introduce Mr. Gopilal Acharya. Again, I would not like to go into detailed introduction because every one of you perhaps will already know him. But at the same time, one thing that I wanted to point out is in addition to everything that he has done, especially the focus on publication and a lot of wonderful articles that he has contributed, I think starting from CNN to Straits Times, scrolling in, the Telegraph, South Asian Monitor, Third Pole, Quincel, and so many articles that Mr. Gopilal has published. And also, I think the other amazing thing is that he has come up with a novel with a stone in my heart, Sidhu. I don't know how many of you have read that. Did you have the opportunity to read that novel? Can I see by a show of hands? So see, this is a perfect opportunity now to get a copy of the novel and read it. So I would advise you to do that. And then also he has come up with, in I think cooperation with Danida, the memoir of, I think, 35 years of development in Bhutan. So again, I think an excellent chronology of all the developmental activities that some of the international agencies have come and implemented in Bhutan, Sishunuela. So I think, again, gives me a great pleasure to invite Mr. Gopilal to please come up on the stage. And a small request is if you can also look out for we have a timekeeper, so who will show if you have only 2 minutes left, then that's the time where you start winding down. Because I think then that will allow us to sort of move on to the subsequent Q&As. Because I really want to make sure that we have enough time for the audience session anyway, because you have traveled from so far. And I think most of you have, the way I heard it is like, I think you have found this to be really a groundbreaking initiative. So I just want to give you more time. So maybe, Doctor, then meanwhile, very briefly, what do you mean by Fourth Industrial Revolution?
So, if we look back, the past major industrial revolution started from England. That is with the steam engine, and along with that, the mass production of goods came in. So after that, the next one is to do with ICT and all that. Then the computer and the internet and all. Now the fourth one is defined by all this social media, connectedness, and in a way much more open. Every person, every individual has the power to reach a lot of big masses. I think in the past only the people who can reach the public maybe through the newspapers and all that. Now through social media, anybody, mostly. So all this connectedness, all this automation, artificial intelligence, robotics, drones, and these changes in technology that is happening at a very rapid pace, this is what defines Fourth Industrial Revolution.
My name is Kinga Tshering. I work for the RSPN as the Executive Director currently. Last, my question is that, Dr. Since you said that technology is the central for development. And, but for me, and you also said that, technology has actually caused a lot of environmental problems too. But there are also, solutions that came up, But for me personally, since environmental issues are mainly to do with us human beings, my questions to you is that, don't you think that technology has also created, so much of inequalities among the human beings? One, and second is, technology has also more or less created all this, capitalism economy type, in the global economy. Thank you.
I think first and foremost, now we have to maybe recognize that technology is a tool, so probably it is neither bad nor good. So it depends on how we use it. So including the social media, I think that's how I would term it. So it has helped in environmental degradation, but at the same time now it holds the promise for saving the environment as well. A lot of new technologies, especially maybe in terms of renewable energy, for instance. So technology, I think, holds a lot of promise. And you are right, I think technology has also led to a lot of producing inequalities. And some people who think of the future feel that maybe super powerful companies may be created in the future who will own all the robots and all the machines. So I think that's a scary thought, but I think that's true. But at the same time, reflecting overall, as I mentioned in my opening statement, overall, I think the common lot's life has improved greatly. Probably this is the age when the biggest number of, or the biggest percentage of the world's population live a comfortable life, say Sunila. And yes, you are also right that the capitalism, is fueled by technology. I think that's right. But then again, I think probably on a philosophical ground, probably a better system than capitalism, I think is very hard to combine, hard to find. And probably the thinkers and a lot of people have been searching for it, but I think it is difficult to find another way. So even China, a communist government, they have adopted capitalistic economy. So I think that's probably at the philosophical level, that is my thinking, Sejunila.
So thank you, Doctor, for bringing us to that point. So next, I would like to, apologies for the technology glitch. Mr. Gopilal, your floor is yours.
Good morning, La. And Kuzongpo to all the participants. Honorable Tsokpan, members of parliament, a lot of my friends, common faces that I see here, and ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this important conference. You know, I was just telling one of our colleagues that I see a lot of new faces, and this is such an inspiration because often we see an ecology of old faces doing the rounds in every conference, you see, and they probably do not really add value in terms of ideas, in terms of opinions. So here what I see today is absolutely new audience, and I'm very happy to be talking with you all. So I'll be talking about clientelism and accountability in Bhutanese politics, and I'll be really rushing because I have more number of slides. If you have any questions, please keep it for the floor. And before I start, thank you, Kinga, for being our moderator. So in this presentation, I'll be mainly talking about clientelism in Bhutanese politics. I'll explain what that is. Now, the whole idea behind this presentation is to build a discourse. I'm not an expert on clientelism. I'm a journalist by profession, but I think all of us have the right to talk about issues. That's what the essence of democracy is. The opportunity to contribute to the national discourse, and I hope we'll be able to achieve through my presentation some sort of discourse on the idea of clientelism. Also, I'll be touching on political leadership and the idea of moral accountability for failed or poor quality public projects, which leads to leakage in public resources. And then what do we do to discourage clientelism in politics? So the bottom line is, as we have always said, should we not cultivate honesty, moral accountability, grace, ideals of integrity, dignity, grace in our politics? These are the things we aspire to, but at the end of the day, how far are we from getting there? This is my take point. The Gelefo Hospital that fell sick recently, it is a major public infrastructure that was funded by the government of India at the cost of 835 million, inaugurated last year, July 2018. But media reports right after inauguration, even within 7-8 months, media reports of how the quality was compromised have been, afloat in the media, the reports. And so the people of Gelefo have said that one of the reasons they feel is the construction was rushed in order to be inaugurated by the incumbent government. Now, what does this mean? This was in July 31, 2018, the inauguration. And then this was in recently, July 15, 1 year, and you have the ceilings falling apart. Very interesting from Quincel, safety of the people inside the Gelefo Hospital. I've been there, by the way, and it's a very scary, humongous building that doesn't really inspire confidence and safety and security when you're inside it. So where is the accountability? Who do you fix accountability on? Is it the contractor or the contractor's engineer, supervising engineers, project manager, tender committee, health officials, auditors? Who do you fix accountability on? Or is it on the moral responsibility, on the political leadership, the former prime minister, health minister, the minister of MOWHS? Because this money, 835 million, was Indian people's taxpayers' money, and they're going to ask for accountability to the Bhutanese government very soon. You people are not seem to be using our money seriously. And how do we respond? So these are the issues I think democracy also raises. A city called White Elephant, all of us know about the education city. It started in 2012 during deputy government time. Huge idea of 1,000 acres, a lot of things happened. The Education Act, the City Act was passed by Parliament. Some work happened. There was an account, city account in BNB, but the project was shut in 2014 when the new government came into power, took office, and when the National Land Commission said that the acquisition of land in Wong Sisina was illegal. And recently, MOWHS said it's closed. But then, whose resources did we waste? Did the resource belong to a political party? Did it belong to some individuals, or was it resources of the people of Bhutan? That is where the idea of accountability should come in. That's where we should transcend politics and political divides, political boundaries when you question about public resources, because those belong to the state, not to a political party or to individuals. Now, who accounts again? The board, DHO officials, again the political leadership, Prime Minister, the Education Minister at the time. These are questions I'm asking. And, look at other projects like PHPA1, Domestic Airport, Samrang Mega Farm, Sambujoka Water Treatment Plant. These are ailing. These projects are just prolonging, taking in a lot of resources. So will we ever see anyone being taken to task? Will we ever see anyone explaining why the slow progress on these, wasteful projects? Now that's where the idea of political clientelism comes. For a country like Bhutan that is resource-strapped all the time, the kind of politics that we see today promoted by political parties is quite interesting, because informally I call it shopping list politics, but what formally they call it clientelism, which means is the political parties or leaders giving material goods in return for electoral support. And this happens in the absence of ideological affinities that parties, do not stand on, where personal contacts and our networks are more important. And it's, the Philip Keffer, the economist with the World Bank, has said that clientelism is more pervasive in countries where ideological distinctions between parties are imperceptible. Problem here, because all the manifestos are the same, all the three political parties promise the same things, voters are lost. So what do? You give to the political party you feel you're closest to, maybe because your cousin is participating or your uncle is participating, right? So what is political clientelism? So imaginary party, you have a party one that goes to community and says, see, I'll give you smartphones to all the households if you vote for me. Another party goes and says, I'll give you jersey cows to all the rural households if you vote for me. So, the voters are basically torn between two, handouts. Okay. By the way, PHP, just imaginary party that it's a power-hungry party. Like APHP is another power-hungry party. So what happens is that this bargain leads to establishment of patronage. You have a patron and you have a client. So the clientelist parties, they rely on brokers, intermediaries, spies, campaign workers to monitor and, voters and the inclinations, okay? Look at another example. PDP will increase CTG to 5 million from 2 million. Introduce public transport in all Georgs. Is that necessary? PDP will ensure every Georg has a fuel depot. Are those necessary? So we're looking at public resources because these are strictly tied to what we have in our treasury. Then, DNT's vehicle quota, 15 lakhs. This is very interesting, for those who have completed 10 years. And then, those who have completed 20 years, it increases, 30 to 40 years, it just goes. So this is what I call reckless vote buying strategies. PDP's pledge, the current 2 million a year, if it is increased, to 5 million a year, that means you are giving 10 million a year. Current, you're giving 50 million a year to a Georg, which means 205 Georgs, 2.5 billion. Do you have the capacity? Add to this, the capital allocation to LG has increased 50% with 12-5 plan. Do we have the capacity in the local governments to handle this kind of money? Are we looking at chaotic execution law? Is there ability to monitor and evaluate and audit public works in the LGs, the local governments? These are the questions that we're looking at. Similarly, DNTs, if you look at, the increase in vehicle quota, it leads to, I'm giving a hypothetical sense, a lot of expenditure. What would we achieve by giving vehicle quota to, corporate employees and civil servants? You're just pleasing them, isn't it? To be very, honestly, you're just pleasing your vote base. And how does it contribute to Bhutan's growth? It doesn't. It would not contribute to the country's growth. However, clientelism is not new. Materially oriented political strategies, even the US, they have the idea of pork barrel politics, okay, where huge promises are made on infrastructure that are totally useless, do not contribute to the public growth, the growth of the country. In India, a lot of money continues to change hand. And even in Bhutan, I think we've heard of, money doing rounds during political campaigns, right? So, clientelism in Bhutan, the patron, the diadetic alliance is involving two people, unequal status, power, resources. So you have a dasho who goes to the villages, and then you have the Misering Yamchung at the end of the different spectrum, that unequal relationship. So the Dasho is there, and the Mr. Yamchung is expecting a lot, from him, and says, "Las, I'll give you my boat mo, no?" And then but the beauty later I'll come is that, the commitment is very poor in this relationship, like clientelism, because you can manage. When you go to the ballot box, I might have promised my vote to PDP, but I can tell, I can go and vote for DPT or DNT or BKP, That's the beauty of the ballot box. So basically, it's a win-win bargain. It seems like win-win bargain, but it damages democracy. Okay? So the patronage is the use of distribution, state resources, and non-meritocratic basis for political gains. I think all of us have seen this. So who pays for boleros, helicopters, free Wi-Fi, farm roads, and domestic airports? It's your money and my money now. That is with the national treasury. This is public resource belongs to the people of Bhutan, right? And we are just being given back our own money in the forms of boleros and in the forms of free Wi-Fi and whatever, So politics basically leads to this kind of, and then it's an easy option, by the way. When a political party doesn't have an ideology, a policy-based, a programmatic-based, stand, then it's very easy to go to a shopping list and say, look, this is what I'm going to deliver if you support me, right? So DPT is instantly remembered for domestic airports, PDP for helicopters and boleros. We do not remember of any. Do you remember any policy credentials on these parties? Not really, right? Very vague to think of what policies did this past two governments, made. But then you can remember a lot of, things they delivered. So that is clientelism. It has, like I said, lack of mutual, trust. With permission from my moderator, can I take additional few minutes? Because I don't want to leave halfway through. I'm very sorry. So clientelism involves, reciprocal and voluntarism, but it also exploitation and domination of the poor people who do not understand how politics works, right? For them, if you go to the rural areas of Bhutan, politics means by the time the elections arrive, a lot of people are just warmed up. They feel good because Darwin, a lot of Sarahs are coming. No, that's the thing. So the client will be full of opportunities and defections at the same time. So it leads to a volatile electorate, fragile, constituencies, and problem of commitments, right? So we were not building a core constituent based on ideas and policies. So consequences of clientelism is that, parties, they are less effective in legislature because a lot of time they spend looking for resources. Our own MPs looking for resources to fulfill their commitment, right? They rush public works to showcase achievements because they have promised you have to better show it in 5 years. This often compromises the quality of public work. And then also, high corruption has been noticed in clientelist models now. Diversion of resources to fulfill promises. Clientelism also linked to poverty and inequality. And, it undermines democracy. So a lot of MPs, I'm sure, would have told you, that people think that job of an MP is to recharge their phones, arrange hospital, appointments, get their children enrolled in schools. I've had my MP friends telling me this, MP no, so they are coming from the city. Please come and pick us up at the bus stand. So, but then you're deflecting them from the real core workload. Consequences of it slows economic development, impairs democracy, and allows dictators to hold on to power. That's what, according to Susan Stokes, another scholar on clientelism. It also undermines the capacity of the bureaucracy, because the government in power has already promised so many things. It often comes in confrontation with the bureaucracy that otherwise gives a good check and balance to the elected governments. And the more party-specific clients, the more divided supporters will be, right? So then what can be done? So I'm saying transition from clientelist to programmatic policy, issue-based politics. I think this is what we should all aspire to. A good political party should aspire to. So that people are able to think themselves as citizens who receive public services for the taxes they are paying to the state, rather than who are receiving freebies and special favors for having bargained their votes. And policies must drive electoral outcomes, not the shopping list. State must impose significant barriers to patronage, including strategic vote buying. Okay, we have to demand moral responsibility, by the way, from our elected leaders. Right now, because we feel a compassionate society, we just let things be. It doesn't matter, But I think that is going to damage our democracy. We cannot afford. If somebody, a political leadership requires to be fixed, even taken to the court, we have to demand that as awakened electorate, as awakened citizens. Transparency in public spending processes, data on public procurement from planning to delivery of services. And also, we should have public or other authorities outside the system to be allowed to question government spending. Some global practices I'll quickly run through is the public finance monitoring systems that have been instituted in certain democracies. We could do something similar so that the government, elected government, is held accountable through stringent, financial scrutiny. Public finance monitoring portal developed by the UN system in Serbia is a good example where people keep track of the public spending. And then public expenditure tracking system, that's PETS, another very good methodology for tracking public expenditure, so that you're able to take care and look at the process of the flow and make sure that the budget do not get diverted to things that are not meant. Social audits, participatory process, through committee members monitor the implementation. Very important now, idea of social audit, because of the empowerment of LGs in terms of spending 50% of the allocated 5-year budget. And CSOs could play a big role here, community-based monitoring and evaluation systems. Participatory budgeting is another very important law. So where the citizens come together, decision-making, allocating, and monitoring of public spending is a big thing. The studies have shown that participatory budgeting leads to significant shifts in government spending toward priorities, directly benefit the poor and the communities. Strengthening local governments, I think in our case, it makes a special case now, because 50%, like I said, and by the way, they are political in nature, which means they can set right priorities. They can set very apolitical, neutral priorities, which are not based on, the party manifestos or party interest. So the voter question, we have already got basic goods services, how do we add value? That's what voters should be asking. See, we have already got, the government, the state has already given us, 5-year plans deliver goods and services, but what would a political party add value to our quality of our lives? That's the question that our people should be asking. So recently, NC questioned the LG capacity in during the recent parliament session. GNS Secretariat, this is what I've always said, should own the 5-year plans, and it should be GNS Secretariat that should be taking the 5-year plans to the GAOX for public consultations and not an elected leader. Totally wrong when an elected prime minister goes around taking the document and giving wrong perception to the people that this is done by me, my government. That's wrong. We should have GNHC taking the ownership of 5-year plans so that you ensure neutrality, you ensure, the apolitical interest in it. And by the way, it also falls in the end of the 5-year, Strengthening the role of the media again here. How do we strengthen the media's role in public finance reporting? Media should report those suspicions to the public, spark debates. For example, Galliford Hospital, wonderful work done by Quinsel, and other media, for raising this issue. Voter education should continue to be, must see better links between policy promises and implementation, so that people are likely to sacrifice the short-term gains for long-term, preferred policy outcomes. This is where a good, I think, democracy should eventually head, says Janila. And thank you so much, Trish Delela, for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Gopilal, for running us through the comprehensive presentation on clientelism in democracy and politics. From what I gather, I think through the examples, Mr. Gopilal has integrated Moshla, clientelism, primarily with the topic. I feel with the figures and the statistics that he has shared, he has integrated biomaths and biodemocracy. Thank you so much for that. I will, just like the previous speaker, maybe a small follow-up question. I think a lot of points to be thought about, to be reflected on. And I also feel that very frank and honest observations on the evolution of, I think, the elections over the past 15 years, 10 or 11 years here in Bhutan, and with very, very specific examples. My question is, Mr. Gopilal, I think in terms of, I suppose, any governing body, as when you held to hold them accountable, don't you say the ultimate jury where the public opinion is sort of in the democratic process, every election process you face the public jury? Isn't that good enough? Really a couple of reasons why. Because the second thing is because you're tying on to, again, the role of the GNSC Commission as the bureaucratic planning body, the ultimate pinnacle planning body, including the details of the 5-year plan. So my question is, if you sort of delegate the ultimate power of planning from a political group to the bureaucracy, and then also you hold, on the other hand, the political group accountable, is that fair?
I think, yes, we have the 5-year plans. A lot of activities are already outlined. But we also have this space whereby the manifestos are aligned with 5-year plans, key priorities and activities. That's where often the flagship projects come in. Some of the pet projects that are very close to the political parties. On the one hand, you have a 5-year plan that is instituted by a non-political body like a GNHC. On the other hand, you have certain activities that overlap or certain new activities that are undertaken by political parties. Now, that's where I think you need to, the fine line that you are referring to. Yes, at the end of the 5 years, voters judge the parties for what they have delivered in terms of public works. And yes, if they have done bad, then we do see that maybe they lose their vote banks, they lose, their public trust and confidence is eroded. But what we have seen is that the moment an elected government takes over, it also takes over moral authority over running the country. And that's where, whether it is politically committed activities or the neutrally instituted activities, the moral leadership still lies with the elected governments as union. And that's where I think the idea of accountability has to come in and has to be effective. That's my feeling. Otherwise, if we do not hold fixed accountability on the elected government, because even recently I attended a talk whereby India is one of the most expert, the expert lawyer. He came to Bhutan. He had come to Bhutan, and then when we raised the question about who should be the boss, bureaucracy or the elected leadership, and he said, in a democracy, it is. The boss is the elected leader. Which means, if you have given him the right to be the boss, to the family head, you also have the right to catch hold of him when things go wrong. And a simple example, when something goes wrong in a household, you look at father for guidance. And similarly, in a democracy, when something goes wrong, we look up to the prime minister because he is the figurehead. And that's where I think he has to hold moral responsibility to things that go wrong. If things go right, yes, we praise him. He gets reelected. His party gets reelected. But if things go wrong and he has condoned poor public spending, if he has overlooked poor public works, I think he's not making a good father, says Yunila. And that's where the moral responsibility to stand up on your own and tell that, look, I made a mistake. My party probably made a mistake. But we can correct it altogether. So simple act of accepting that things didn't go the way. That's where I guess the moral responsibility comes.
The morality of the moral story is that to have a moral politician, you have to have moral voters, mostly. So I think it all comes back to each and every one of us in the end. Let us move on to the next, another very exciting and knowledgeable speaker, again, whom all of you know very well, Namgye. If you can please come up to the podium. So Namgye is the Executive Director of the Journalists Association of Bhutan, has more than a decade's experience in all forms of media. She is a trainer and consultant for media and gender issues, a mental health advocate, and LGBTQ ally as well. And she is a young Asian leader and a Fulbright Humphrey Fellow. And I'm sure you must have also watched her excellent talks, and then also so many other messages that she has been sharing with us over the social media. Thank you so much. And I think when you talk about the LGBTQ inclusiveness, I would say that, especially I think in presence of our honorable speaker here, and with I think the messages that Namgye and the whole community has been sharing, I think we did make a landmark achievement mola with, I suppose, nullifying a couple of clauses in our penal code, which now makes it very, very inclusive for all communities in Bhutan. So I think this is really a landmark achievement for the community. And again, congratulations to everybody. And I think we should give them a big round of applause for this. Plus, thank you, Namgye, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Excellency, and to all of you who've come to attend this program. I think it's such a privilege to be able to speak to people who actually want to listen to you. Like Ogopi, just ahead of me, said, we used to seeing the same faces over and over. This is why our honorable speaker also recognizes so many faces wherever he goes. But today, I think it's different, the group that came here. A lot of us in the media don't seem to recognize the faces, but it's such a privilege, I must share with you, that we want to share because you're here to listen of your own volition and not because somebody forced you to be here. Why am I here today? I'm here to talk about what has media got to do with a biodemocracy. I'm not as erudite as the two speakers ahead of me. I'm not an academic either. I really do not like PowerPoint presentations. If I do presentations, it will be when I'm doing a workshop or a training for an entire day on gender or something you really need to read to understand. What I have to share with you today is more of an exercise of questioning and to really make you curious about what Bhutanese media could do in what is a biodemocracy. Because we had tea, etc. We've had a few hours of discussion on this, but I hear a lot of people still mulling over biodemocracy and trying to understand what it is. I'm trying to understand it as well. Honorable Speaker laid it out really well in the morning speech, and I think I will follow after. I'm glad to be following after. Glad to be following after Ogopi and Osige as well, because this is all part of a biodemocracy. The media's role in a democracy, all of you understand, it's vital. We are the fourth estate, we hold people accountable, etc., etc. But what about a biodemocracy? So for me, when I first heard this, when I first read this rather, it was a tweet from the Center for Local Governance and Research. And I was like, what is this biodemocracy? And I thought about it for a while. A few days after, Osange Kandu comes and he's like, would you be interested in speaking at the conference? And I said, at first I wasn't too sure because I'm not an expert. I hadn't read up on biodemocracy or seen it in the news anywhere. So my relationship with biodemocracy starts with biodiversity. So I asked Osange Kandu, I said, for me, when I hear biodemocracy, I think of biodiversity. And I'm going to be taking it forward from there. And he said, in a way, you're right too. So my example today focused completely on forests. Kinga did allude to it a little while earlier. And of course, Osige did answer a question. I'm not dwelling on blockchain technology because that is not my area of expertise. But writing stories is. So what is a biodemocracy? The word sustainability comes to mind because of its association with biodiversity as well as ecology. Can we have then a sustainable democracy? Do we have a sustainable democracy now? I'm going to be starting with questions. We do have a democracy, yes. We can't agree on the definition of sustainability. And this is where the problem arises. Because when we talk about democracy, democracy is really based on consensus. But when we talk about sustainability, do we have that consensus? And this is where I see a subtle problem arise. Because we lack consensus. Forget about the US and the climate change skeptics. Let's look at ourselves here. How many of you are familiar with Dr. Finson Namgyal's work? May I see a show of hands now? Okay, see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, there's no peer pressure to keep raising your hands now. But yeah, 12. I was introduced quite late, unfortunately, Dr. Finson Namgyal's work. And it was through a story covered by BBS. It said, cut trees, save forests, if I'm not mistaken. And the headline really caught my attention. And I was like, what is this? Then I read it. And I was like, wow, this is quite a revelation to me. So what Dr. Finson Namgyal is saying, that our forests are overstocked. And what do you mean by overstocked? Our constitution mandates that we have 60% forest cover at all time, and this is minimum. What is our forest cover right now? Anybody wants to hazard a guess? What is the forest cover? La? 68? 30%, Utsav. Oh, okay, 80%. Oh, it's close to it. So what Dr. Finson Namgyal says is we have 84% forest cover in the country. Now, is this good for us? In terms of PR, in terms of making it to wonderful environmental magazines and conservation articles, it's fantastic because we happen to be, now we're not the only country, but we are the first carbon negative country to be recognized in the world. Now we have a country called, I'm not too sure how to pronounce it, Suriname or Suriname. So there are 2 small countries in the world that are carbon negative. This is excellent for Bhutan. But what are we gaining out of our carbon negativity, right? So what is our older trees and 84% forest cover doing to Bhutan? So Dr. Finson Namgyal says that it is detrimental to our hydrology. Trees use up a lot of water. I'm not going to say that Thimphu's water shortage is because of this, but this is one of the dangers. Mega fires are caused by having forest cover like this. It is also a threat to biodiversity. And for me, this was new knowledge. I was extremely excited about it. And I shared it, thinking that Bhutanese would share my excitement to my Facebook page. And a lot of controversial things always keep happening on my page. The intent is good, the end result never. So after a few hours, I go back thinking, oh, I've actually engaged Bhutanese in a conversation on forest management. I go back, oh my God, the fury that met me on my page. People were so upset that a Bhutanese, that too a forester, would dare tell people to cut down trees. How dare you, you know? So that got me thinking, what are we proud about? I already mentioned carbon negativity. But then think about a social forestry day. What do we do on a social forestry day, La? La? Plant trees. Do we need to plant trees? Is what I started to think. Why are we only focusing on planting trees? Why aren't we having a conversation about why we must cut trees too? Because this apparently is also a good thing for Bhutan. We have mandated 60% forest cover at all time through our wonderful constitution. We have 84%. We're importing more wood than we're exporting. And what Dr. Finson Namgyal says, another brilliant idea, is that you can actually make more money out of our forests than we make out of hydropower. I'm not going to get into the numbers because I don't remember it. I'm not a numbers person, but it's huge, it's tremendous. If you read his articles, you'll find them on Quinsel as well as on BBS. Now, where does the media come in here? We're not foresters. The conversation. Do we have to lead this conversation? I think yes. If you see all of the stories by Dr. Finson Namgyal, it's either opinion pieces or a coverage of a conference or researchers. But a journalist has not led this forward by asking the question, what is sustainability in Bhutan? Is it cutting down trees or is it planting trees? Or is it both? But we're not asking these questions. This is why I think the media can play a really important role in creating a biodemocracy. Do we want to be the kind of democracies that we see around us? For instance, until recent times, we would look at the US as an example of what a democracy should be. But today, when I look at the US, that's the last thing I want Bhutan's democracy to be like. Or even look in the region. Look at Nepal, look at India, look at the Maldives. Is that the kind of democracy we want? That is the power of the majority, for the people, by the people. I think not. Because if you're to go by the majority, even just in Bhutan, people want to keep planting trees. You don't want to cut down trees, but research. And this is the minority. Foresters and researchers like Dr. Finson Namgyal are the minority, even in our forestry community in Bhutan. This is why we're still planting trees in Bhutan. This is something for us to think about. So who creates the consensus of taking it from the circles of minority to the majority? It's the media. Can we lead the conversation to make people see that what we need to talk about now is also forest management? And it doesn't make you less Bhutanese to do so. It doesn't mean you're disrespecting the constitution. But what the media needs to do now, unlike other times, and I want to say unlike in the democracy, where we really echo the voices of the majority and present, or lead the majoritarian conversation forward, we need to bring the conversation of the minority to the fore. What we need to do now is not just report on the consensus, but to create a consensus. This is the role of the media in a biodemocracy. Thank you, Lab.
Thank you, Namgye, for bringing another exciting perspective, I think, to today's topic on biodemocracy. And I think the very relevant invoking of Dr. Phintso Namgay's article, which I admit I haven't also gone through, but I think from today I'll make sure that I also read it. So I think, especially as Namgay has posed the question, we have the mandatory requirement of more than 60% forest coverage, one of the only carbon negative countries in the world. And I think it's when we have this particular image, and I think the strong story which is already out there, at the same time I think it will be difficult sometimes to go the other way around and start questioning that. And I feel that Namgay has raised a very, very pertinent question, and I also applaud her for raising a question which is contrary to the conventional wisdom. And I feel that in addition to the specific forest topic and the topic on the whole environmental issues, I think the whole culture of, again, in a democracy, to question the government, to question the parties, and I think to question the officials in an unconventional way, I think is very important. So I think this is one of the main learnings from Namgay's talk. As a follow-up, I think specific to forest management, Namgay, could you share that perhaps maybe from what Dr. Phintso has shared also, how could we then get an inventory of all the trees and plants? Because even as of now, there is a debate on, are we really 80%? I mean, it's quite apparent mostly when we started asking the audience, the answer ranged from 60% to 84%. So any recommendation on how to actually, to start this conversation on how to get our fingers around the number?
I mentioned the minority conversation has now to reach the majority. And how can that happen? That you have an agreement, a consensus. How do you arrive at the consensus? So far, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Ugyen Wong Chuk UWICR, I forgot the full form of it, is doing some form of archiving and documentation. I have not spoken to Dr. Phintso Namgyal on this personally, but we do have conversations very often on Twitter. And I'm sure that he must have a list with him. But then if this could be shared with the Ministry of Agriculture so that it almost becomes, it should become, I think, a national priority. Right now, it doesn't seem to be a priority that we should be cutting down trees. It's seen as a contentious issue. I think people who are policymakers, key decision makers, now the information is available in the domain. I don't think it's the task of a journalist to go and, for instance, tell Honorable Speaker, because he's the highest ranking DNT official here, that Limpo, now please go and tell your DNT members that I shared this here. But now it is also Limpo's knowledge is in the public domain. Now I think there could be some, it could be, I wouldn't say proactive, but some action out of concern, because Article 5 was quoted from the Constitution by Your Excellency yourself, where we are all guardians of our ecology. And this is our personal responsibility, because as soon as we talk about responsibility, we want to fix it on somebody. And then now what O is asking me to do is identify somebody who can take this forward. I think it's really all of our responsibilities. But we have people in very important positions who are sitting with us in this room today. I think this conversation can go forward. But then there is the necessity for a documentation so that the argument becomes convincing. Dr. Phintso Namgyal has all of the numbers that you want. I won't be surprised if he already has a stock of this also.
We now come to a very exciting component. I hope I have enough time for the audience to engage with our excellent panelists, Shinwei. I believe we have about 20 to 25 minutes, and with the organizers' consent, I think if the conversation is very exciting, probably we can take a few minutes extra session. So as a final warm-up for the audience question, I'll just put one more question. So meanwhile, if you can please put your question down, you can pass it in writing also, if you think there's not much time more, so that we can get the questions as early as possible. Otherwise, please think about your question for the next 20 to 25 minutes. My next question is basically to start maybe a discussion among the panelists. I think all of us have been now, seen the theme of each of the presentation that our three honorable speakers have brought up, starting from the fourth industrial revolution to the role of media in biodemocracy to clientelism. My question to all three of you, in a way to tie things, if we take on from the last question, the forest inventory management again, as Namgye was saying, I think there are scholars and there are agencies who will be taking responsibility for that. But to that, again, I would like to then come back to, again, use of technology. How would, again, blockchain, please forgive me for really blocking this chain, but I feel that with the current trend, global trend, I think this is something which the sooner and the more we get ingrained in our mindset, I think the better for Bhutan is. For a landlocked, very small country with the aspiration to become a knowledge-based society, I think what Doctor is sharing with us is very, very pertinent. So therefore, let me come back to that. So Doctor, from your view, how do you think you can use this to do an inventory of the forestry chain? And then against that, Namgye can counter or maybe complement on that. Similarly, I think to Gopilal's excellent presentation on some of the projects, starting from Gyalifu Ceiling to Education City to a lot of the accountability and the construction project. I think where some of the latest figures are that 80% of the entire 5-year plan budget goes into procurement. Out of that, for the last 1 year, I believe that out of 700 construction that is going on, about 80% of the bidders have quoted below the official estimate price. And out of that, 63% have actually run over cost and 80% have run over time. So I think what you're bringing out, I think, sort of aligns with the national statistics on where the state of our construction industry is. And on this, again, Dr. Sige, from what I read is, I think the city is called Sanyo in China, where they have now designed the entire city based on blockchain concept. And then they are trying to build another one in Malaysia, where all of this transparency, accountability, and data is managed really well. So on that also, if Doctor can comment, and then perhaps then, the other speakers can chime in. Thank you.
I mentioned earlier that blockchain offers security. So besides security, the other feature is transparency. So the things stored on blockchain, that can be viewed by anybody, but then you cannot change it easily. So that's what makes it secure. So given these two features, I think it's going to be a very good use for maybe taking inventory of our forest resources or the biodiversity that we have. So I think blockchain will definitely have, given these two main features, I think it will lend itself very well to the solutions that we are looking for in this space. I'm not very much aware of the two cities that Kinga sir mentioned, but I think blockchain is, from these two standpoint, a very good technology. Transparency. Anybody can view where it is, how much it is, how many, how the kind of the number of species that we have or number of trees we have in that particular forest. All this can be there, and anybody can look at it and also track the changes that has taken place over the years. So I think it would also be, it will also align well with what Madam Namgye has proposed, from Dr. Phunsu Namgye's studies. Thank you.
I think for me, I'm all for everything in technology, especially digital archival, coming from a standpoint of journalism as well, because when you want to go back, for instance, the arguments and the cases that Ogopi put forward, if progress had been kept in one place, it would be easier for people to follow up stories in Mebala. So even from a journalistic point of view, I am completely in support of storage of information online, as opposed to having to rifle through papers or go to Quincel's website, do search, type the reporter's name, type Gelufo Hospital, because different kinds of things show up and not exactly what you want. So if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Sige, even blockchain allows the specific storage at the mullah. And when we say technology, people think you have to create this entire infrastructure for this. No, you can already start from wherever we are right now. And especially for researchers and foresters, and especially because this is so integral to a biodemocracy, I really support the digital archival of this information. And I would really, request, even implore our foresters, researchers, academics to have your information stored online in a manner that is that cannot be changed by anyone, not like on Wikipedia where you can go and have edits. So I think it's really important to have this. I cannot, because I do not understand it as much as Dr. Sige does, or somebody who works with technology, but I am completely in support of having all of our information stored online now.
I think what Namge just said brings to another concept. Even if you have the information stored, the idea of access is very important, especially for the media. Right from the new elected government in 2008 up until today, I think there have been the issue of the Right to Information Act. It's been discussed, I think, elaborately and in detail, but no government has had the courage so far to actually pass the bill. So I don't know. Let's see what the DNT government does. But access and also access also linked with transparency. If you are making something accessible, that means you're not scared. That means you're not hiding anything, right? The public transparency, whether it's about development budget, whether it's about decisions that impact communities. I think the need for transparency through access to information is very important because that empowers people and that helps them to make informed choices and decisions, to use this cliches anyway, but it does make sense because this is where when I now, what Kinga was talking about, the huge amount of money spent on public procurement, 80% of our money goes into public procurement. You're procuring either goods or services, right? And there's a lot of underquoting from the estimated value. And that's what often results in shoddy jobs now, in poor quality public works. Now, how do you ensure? I want to take you all back towards the end of my presentation where I talked about participatory budgeting. It's something that's really, it's been really taken up by a lot of countries around the world, a lot of communities, including cities like New York and Paris, that bring their residents together to plan, to allocate, and to monitor budgets, and to look at the end results. This is where the idea of social audits, especially on the local governments, now that we have given them more responsibility, I think it's also our responsibility to build their capacity so that they are able to track, they're able to plan, they're able to monitor, they're able to track the expenditure, and at the end of the day, able to achieve the desired impact. That's where empowering the local governments becomes very important. And for me, social audits and participatory budgeting are new ideas that appeals, and possibly we could talk about and build a discourse on it.
So can we have the questions from audience? Maybe we'll take 2 or 3 at a time so that our speakers can address that.
I'm a technologist and I'm very optimistic about technology. I want everything to be digitized, and there is a digital democracy and access of information. But when it comes to choice of technology, whether it is what kind of technology we choose for our next generation and the investments that we're going to make in that, and hopefully will not lock ourselves with some kind of technology so we don't get into a technology lock-in kind of a situation. That's where my concerns with blockchain comes in. I would, as much as want to understand blockchain more, there are 2 concerns about blockchain that comes to my mind. One is on the security. It is only secure when it is big, and when it is big, it's very expensive. That's one aspect. And the other aspect is also in terms of the bigger the chain gets, the more expensive it is in terms of energy to actually, put in another transaction into the block. So in terms of, security, if we start our own private blockchain in Bhutan, the security aspect, as far as I understand, will not be as much as the public blockchain would provide, but it's very expensive to go to public blockchain. And the amount of energy it requires is another major concern for blockchain as the blockchain. That's why we don't buy coffee on a blockchain if we are using blockchain for cryptocurrency. So would be interesting to look at some of these thoughts for discussion. Maybe media can play a role in bringing up this discussion online, and Dr. CK can talk about a bit about technology on that. Thank you.
Honorable Chokpan and panelists, thank you very much. My name is Pema Wangda, and I'm the Executive Director for Bhutan for Life Fund Secretariat, and I will be having a presentation later. But for now, I just would like to clarify some of the points that Namge has raised, and I think it's good to actually to clarify certain points here. First of all, the forest coverage is 71% in the country, and the agency that actually conducted the inventory is the Department of Forest Park Services, particularly the Forest Resource Management Division. And they took from 2012 to 2016 to conduct a very detailed survey. So the forest coverage, 71%, is based on the definition of FAO, so which means the height of the tree, like 5 meters and above. But if you consider shrubs and alpine meadows, then it's about 80%. So for the information of the House, it's 71% total coverage. And when it comes to the more trees and less water, and how the forest consume more water by having more forest, less water, more forest, less water, I have still, with due respect to Dr. Prince Namge, who is my program director, I worked under him for so long, and he is a very knowledgeable person, and I really respect him, but I do not buy the idea of having less tree and more water. Just imagine that Bhutan, we receive monsoon of 4 months, from June to October. And that period, if we do not have a forest cover on a very steep terrain like Bhutan, you know, we have barely about 7% flatlands arable agricultural land. And all our mountainous country, I mean the terrain. So just imagine.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm sorry to barge in, but could you end with a question?
Okay. So my, just for clarification, this is very important because we have been discussing a lot on this issue. And we have a research already conducted. So we have more forest means
less. So maybe we can share the link to the research later, but for now, if you can end with the question, because we need to move on to the other questions.
So
I'm sorry about that.
Okay, question is like we have a sponge and bare soil, and we just pour the water, and what will happen?
Thank you. That was a really interesting panel, but it left me with questions. So, Gopi, I want to ask you, so when you were talking about clientelism, and for me, when I teach, stuff like that, it reminds me of how studies have been done on African states, where neo-patrimonialism as the specific form of clientelism is common. It does have this kind of advantage as well, that it stops from kind of neoliberal restructuring to be carried out super efficiently in a clientelist state, right? Because there's always different kinds of rent seeking. So there are some stability advantages. But the question that I have for you is, are there non-litigious routes towards accountability? Because you said, take to court. And my worry is that as societies get more litigious, they also get more divisive. So can we think of ways of creating accountability without litigation or without resorting to litigation? The real thing that I have is actually with Namge, the real question, because I have an indoor tree in my London studio, right? So I love trees. And I feel like a tree is a living being, okay? Following on from that, how can, in a fragile mountainous ecosystem, how can cutting trees ever be good when you think about, soil, siltage, roadblocks, everything? So that just seems very counterintuitive. I don't know. I'm trying to not sound emotive. Perhaps when I've calmed down, I'll think of a rational question. But my question really is, how does that make sense? Because, with climate change, trees should help biodiversity, not hurt it. So, I just feel for the trees. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So for the honorable speakers, we have 3 questions now.
I think I'll start first. So regarding blockchain, now I think what Ujjwal is referring to is now if we are if we want to implement something on blockchain on our own in Bhutan, for instance, and if it is, for instance, let's say a government system, in that case, naturally the choice is to go with the private blockchain. And when you have private blockchain, then the number of nodes will be smaller as well. But still that the normal rules of blockchain can apply. But in terms of security, when it comes to the private blockchain, then it's not as secure because still the authority, the organization which owns the blockchain, it can have the overriding authority. If it instructs that this be changed like this, then it can still happen on the blockchain. So the real secure blockchain is the public blockchain, like Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the first one that came in. So it is really decentralized, and there are a lot of nodes now. I think billions of nodes. So it's really, really secure, 100% secure, I can say. No one has the authority to change anything on Bitcoin except by through this 50% consensus. So that is where the security comes in. Now, Ujwal's question on maybe if we start our own blockchain, but maybe because there are not many nodes, so it may not be as secure. But I have not implemented blockchain myself, but we invited a guy from Netherlands last year and who gave a very comprehensive talk and training on blockchain. So my understanding from him is that you can implement a blockchain on Ethereum. Ethereum is a very large blockchain. It is second only to Bitcoin. So Ethereum allows that implementation, and using Ethereum, you can implement your own public blockchain, and I think that will be as secure as it is on, as secure as Ethereum, because you just piggy bank on Ethereum's reach. So if you are looking for implementing public blockchain, it's still possible. So that's where new cryptocurrencies come in and doing ICOs, initial coin offerings. Mostly it's done on Ethereum, says Sunil. That is my answer on blockchain, but I feel that probably we can use...
yes, similar if you can.
Yeah, very quick idea. I think we can use the drones to actually count the trees and resolve the debate between, Pinsonamge's views and the official view. I feel that we can use the drones. Thank you.
So thank you, Doctor, on the clientelism and the trees.
Yes.
I think I just, Dr. Pemo, on this thing, I do agree because I remember writing about it in Pinsel, that it was at the time 72% the first coverage, if it did not include the shrubs and the alpine meadows. So I still believe myself that it would be around 70 to 72% coverage. On the clientelism, I think, Natasha, thank you so much. By the way, also thank you for organizing this and giving us the opportunity. Bhutan also has the remnants. We were a feudal society, by the way. We still have the remnants of feudalism still in our day-to-day, interactions. Simple, phrases like "jungi tajumi," you mean you're serving the government. It means you're already putting yourself as an unequal, partner in that bargain. Similarly, if I say Dr. Gichajudi, it means that I'm right below him. I have to be groveling up to him for favors. So we do have the remnants of that society, and you see this creeping into politics, which is very bad, because I think democracy should lead to the building of an equal society. See, that's what we always talk about. The discourse is about how to bring those left behind, right, and create a level playing field for everyone. And that's where I think the idea of clientelism might, kind of impair our democracy by actually creating a chasm between the patrons, that is the potential politicians who come, seeking your favor, for small bargains. So the danger of, this relationship is always there. That's where I get a feeling that, yes, politics is based on such an exchange, but is there a way we can move beyond that, more into policy issues? And by the way, it's a small, manageable population, small country. Border education is possible. Every head can be counted. So I see possibilities in Bhutan, you see, that which we might not see in Africa or even in India. And are we taking advantage of this by being unique, as we claim all the time that we are? That's where my, idea is.
Thank you.
Yeah, the litigation is, yes. Obviously, I also talked about having public oversight. I think is the better answer. Then actually, litigation is not an option, obviously. But having public oversight, it's important, I think, especially on public, spending on huge projects, activities that take up huge public resources. That is what we do have oversight bodies, but at the local government, where you have participation of common people, the communities in the oversight activities, I think would be very useful for us as we go ahead.
I did write this paper knowing that I will have to defend it, Dr. Finson Namgyal and myself. If you remember my photo, I was standing right in the middle of a forest. It's not like I don't love trees. I'm a tree hugger as well. So I empathize with your concern, Natasha. I think when Dr. Finson Namgyal advocated this, he didn't advocate for rampant deforestation. Now there's a difference. It's not like all of us are going to take our axes and cut down every tree that we see. We have, even if it's 72%, whatever, it'll be still 10% higher than what we should be when it comes to 60% forest cover in Bhutan. And when Dr. Finson Namgyal actually advocates this, he has numbers to support how can we go about doing sustainable forest management in the country. And I think one of the percentages is 0. Even if we were to cut down trees, it would make, there's a Quintel article, I can share links later, but it's very, very, I don't want to say negligible, but very, very minimal, that the impact of it on our forestry and our biodiversity is going to be minimal. So there is no danger that everybody's going to be given an axe or a tree cutter and then you go and cut down all of the trees. I think what we're doing now when we're having the discussion is some of us also come approach it from a moral perch. It's the same argument we have when we say, oh, but if we give electricity and internet to these people, now let's talk about our highlanders and our nomads. And then we say, but it's almost destroying their way of life. But when they look at us, they want the same kind of, these are basic amenities. And there was a point when the discussion was around this, that, but if you remove it, then we sort of remove their authenticity. If you give them electricity, if you give them internet, if you give them the option to wear Go and Kira, then we have a hand in ruining their authenticity. Now the debate with forest, in my write-up, in the paper I did write, there are generations of us sitting in this room. And none of us are going to agree on this conversation of sustainability. I did preempt this while I was doing my presentation a while earlier. Is it? Yes, forests are an identity of Bhutan. If we are to be an example of biodemocracy, we do have to have forests, we have to have trees. Again, I will hark back to Dr. Finson Namgyal's research and his papers, and I will ask all of you to read his work, and also other people who think like him in the forestry community, so that Sirpema and I will read more of Dr. Finson's work, and other people's work around the world that support this and are in favor of it. And to come back to your analogy, I do have an answer to it. You said, yes, pour water on soil. You didn't tell me where the soil was and what it was in. If you pour water continuously in a pot of soil, there is growth in it. And I'm going to leave it at that.
My question is related to media. I know media is very important. I think it is referred to as a fourth state and also the fourth power. But with power, I think there comes responsibility. So I will again go back to Dr. Finson Namgyal's study, because that is, I think, it's a one-sided reflection of what is happening here. So from the point of view of the things are getting reported in terms of cutting down trees, I think it is the responsibility of the media to make sure that all sides of the story is covered. But I think Dr. Finson Namgyal, with due respect to him, he's one person with a PhD, but there are other foresters with 28 foresters with PhD who does not support his theory. So in that context, I would like to urge, or I would like to submit here the role and responsibility, the editorial responsibility, the moral responsibility of the media. How can we strengthen that? I think when you are reporting something that is controversial, I think you have to actually get the facts straight. And from the mere fact that some of us, we don't even know what is the exact coverage of a forest, and reporting on something that you're not very familiar with, or it's not complete, I think it falls on the shoulder of the media to make sure that this kind of information are not misinterpreted. So how do we strengthen the moral responsibility and the ethical responsibility of the media?
Thank you, Choki. I think very, very pertinent question.
Okay, we are talking a lot about artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, blockchain, but I feel in Bhutan we are really, technologically we are very behind. When it comes to, people do not use email. It surprises me when people do not use email out here. I've seen people messaging me on WeChat. WeChat, things will be sent, but on email, nobody uses it. So how do we address that gap of talking of blockchain and not opening an email address? Yeah.
Yes,
Just address
thank
the
you.
gap.
Good morning. My name is Lekil. My question is to the Kopila. Going by your presentation, if you look into the two ends, one from the Dasho angles and one from the Nyamchung's angle, your recommendations was mostly focused on the change in the system in terms of structures and the systems or institutionalization of the system. But we have many of our member of parliaments as well as, the politicians who are very sincere in their efforts in the beginning. But over the time, because of this Nyamchung's pressure, they had to tune in on the other angle. So therefore, how do we ensure from the other ends, from the Nyamchung sides, if you have to go way forward, is there any research or the experiences from the other countries, which approach should be better? Is it a Dasho's side which educates, or it is the Nyamchung side we should be educating?
Just a very quick question on accountability. I just thought probably when you have to fix accountability, especially in a democratic setup, so it's the client, the electorate who should be informed. My experience is, I think people, especially in the local, at the village level, people seems to be very well aware of national politics. But as Kopila has really highlighted, politics, I don't know whether in this room any one of us know budget or even Zongkak's budget, how much we have. So if you agree to this idea that local government the knowledge of their own budget and minimal level, that's my understanding. If you agree to that, who should be responsible to educate or inform this electorate? What role? Stakeholder so some suggestions from the panel members. Quick question, Libra that Facebook is going to launch sometime in next year. Any the blockchain
Lasola, I'll start answering from Mr. Kato's question. So Facebook is launching a cryptocurrency, crypto coin. So it is a big thing. It means that the cryptocurrency is not going to die. Many governments around the world, they are not sure what to do. But countries like Japan, Switzerland and Singapore, they have been more supportive of the changes happening in the crypto space. So cryptocurrency and blockchain are actually, cryptocurrency is powered by the blockchain technology. So the blockchain technology is the current biggest application in cryptocurrency. And cryptocurrency is set to disrupt the financial sector. Maybe the banking sector will be more disrupted. So the Facebook going into this is a big thing. So this change is happening in a big way. So Facebook is actually a cryptocurrency coin, just like Bitcoin. So there are actually thousands of cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin being the most popular, followed by Ethereum. And this new coin by Facebook is one of the new things. Now, quickly to the other question.
Doctor, maybe I'm really sorry to barge in, just so that we can distribute the time. Maybe if you can conclude with your final word, so that you don't have to come back.
Lasola. So finally, I think I can very well merge with the answer to the question as well, because these technological changes are happening in a big way. And if we look at history, every time the countries that have led in developments are the ones which are leading in the new technologies. So Bhutan, we are very aware of the new technologies that are coming in. So we should be prepared, Sejunila. And the best way to do that is through, I think, the interventions through government programs and education. So I think more people should start using emails and also adopting technologies. Thank you.
Like I said, there's a commitment issue when you talk about this patronage system, and especially in political thing, like as quoted earlier, it's up to the elected party to keep its promise or not after they get elected. See, that's how the equation works, and it's also up to the people to tell the political party that we support you, but do something else. Rendition them once you're in the ballot box. That's why it's a very unstable relationship when you talk about clientelism in politics. That's why they need to move beyond, material goods and freebies and handouts in election to a more informed, policy-based debates. I think that's where all of us should contribute. It's our responsibility. On the other, I think, Aukadogi question, very important. You yourself being with the LG, some of my friends who have been with the local governments, I tell you, local governments will be the answer to, effective use of public resources, only if we strengthen them. Right now, as things stand, it's a really far cry. If you look at how the GEOC offices are manned, they don't have an accountant, they don't have an engineer, and there are a number of public works going around, and the district engineer is always out 30 days, out of the Zongkak office, hopping from one GEOC to another, providing oversight, looking, supervising, providing advisory services to the GUPs, totally overworked, and that's where the compromise on the quality comes. So I think it's our responsibility. It's also responsibility of the government to strengthen the local government by building their capacity. There have been projects. I know that from 2008, Danita had supported the local government support program, through a number of donors. I hope the program still goes on, and it's also the responsibility of GNHC to, look into, strengthening local governments. But at the end of the day, the beauty of democracy is the people. It's for you and me to make a choice of what kind of democracy we want. Do we want to continue with the status quo? Do you want us to, not to refine our democracy, fine-tune our democracy as we go ahead? Or do you want to, aim for higher ideals? Do you want to bring in more ethical values, more honesty in the way we conduct in the political space? That's for all of us to think about. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Gopilal. Next, and the final response from Namgye, from Mr. Chiku especially, I think on the media's roles and responsibilities. It's a vast question, so let me rephrase and see if we can tie it with Shishti's question on, if you can't even write an email, what responsibility are you talking about?
That's unfair.
But I know you have already premeditated it, so well.
Let me see. I'm glad Ochiku asked the question as well, and I knew this topic was going to be contentious. The thing is, whose biodemocracy is it? Whose democracy is it? Democracy doesn't belong to journalists or to foresters. So yes, there are different views in your forestry community now. And I've cross-checked these findings with the opposition leader himself as well. We had a very long conversation on a flight back to Bhutan. And I will say that I am quite convinced that the argument is compelling. Now, can the 80% or so foresters researchers put forward an equally compelling argument, saying where he's wrong with your numbers and your facts, and say if we go down this line, in how many years will we begin to see the dangerous consequences that the conventional wisdom of foresters predict at this point in time? Then can we have an argument based on numbers? What the job of a journalist is to do, yes, we have our responsibility, but our biggest responsibility is to tell the stories, how many ever stories there are. There are different stories that are coming out of the forestry community, and I think it is the job of the media to put this story forward, although it is unpopular, although it is not supported by the majority. Now, what is your responsibility as a forester that belongs in the 80%, or a researcher, or a consultant in this 80 percentile that you just put forward, is to also speak to the media, to put forward your opinions and your pieces in the media. They did not say no to Dr. Finson Namgil, they will not say no to you. I think that is your responsibility. This is how we can have a vibrant, not just a democracy, but a biodemocracy, where through dialogue like this, we can arrive at a consensus. Is Dr. Finson Namgil wrong? Okay, how is he wrong? Then we can also prove it to the rest of the people who do not have access to the kind of information that you have access to. And also coming to Shrishti's question about people who will not even open up Gmail. This is our generation, the generation that jumped from no TV to no radio to internet now. I think the younger generation that is growing up and the new graduates that we have come forward, they're not going to be confronting this challenge.
Thank you. Let's give them a big round of applause. So that brings us close to the session for now. I don't think we really have time for any summary as yet, but I think any moderator might not be able to do justice in a way to the richness of the discussion and everything that took place. All I can say is I would like to bring us back to the keynote address delivered by Honorable Tsokpen in terms of tying biodemocracy with a very relevant, on-the-ground notion, bringing from biomaths and biochemistry to biodemocracy. And then I think the richness of the content from the expertise background on all the honorable speakers I've shared from very, very diverse background, as you have seen. So with this, I think a couple of things at the higher level, I suppose, as the tone was said by honorable speaker, what kind of story are we telling about as a GNH country when it comes to biodiversity? In terms of inspiration, are we gathering it from the environment? Are we gathering it deep down from spiritual resources? Are we curating it among our expertise who are all here today? I think these are a question that we will be asking continuously as we build up on the visions of GNH propounded by our kings. And also I feel that because we have so many people from academia here, from the teachers from far-flung places, I think this is also the perfect time for us to sort of reflect on some of the higher messages that we will be taking forth as Bhutan, as a biodemocracy now. The term has been coined. And to this, I feel that given the environment, eventually the spiritual inspiration and legislation honorable speaker has shared, the technicality, substance our speakers has shared. So are we even looking at a situation where we are going to give animal rights, plants rights, according to in equality with human rights? I think there are some people who have even suggested that this could be a world of predation, where we have the animals voting for democracy, where we have the plants asking them to vote for democracy. So the question is, do they have the capacity to think? Do they have the capacity to actually choose their right representative? I mean, this is again taking it to the next level beyond the human voters that we are talking about here. But I think if any place can take leadership in these kind of questions and discussions, it should be Bhutan, it should be the land of GNH. And I think finally, the point that all of you have noted here is the ability to ask the tough questions. I think Dr. Phuntsho Namgyal has predominantly featured in this discussion, and I think we will keep on asking these questions. Because again, as somebody has shared, when you address a crowd of 1,000 people, can you address a crowd without offending, 10 people, without offending 3 people? And I think one of the problems when you come to clientelism again is the aspiration of the politicians to address a crowd of 1,000 people and please almost every one single of them. That's not going to happen. So I think with this, what we do now is the final takeaway from this is, with all the valuable inspiration and the lessons that you are learning, and message from the organizers and honorable speaker is that each one of us has the responsibility no matter what part we play in the society. The question is again, as somebody, Rabbi Hillel has asked, if not now, when? And if not me, then who? So with this, thank you so much. And I really appreciate all the organizers and the excellent panelists. And once again, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you.